Resources Governance and Stakeholder Relations Committee of Waterfront Toronto. I've been advised that a quorum is present and it's appropriate to proceed. And firstly, I welcome all those who are joining our meeting today. We have a number of important items to cover and we appreciate your interest and participation. And I'd also like to remind you that the open session of today's meeting is being recorded and will be posted for the public to view. So we will first start with a land acknowledgement. Waterfront Toronto acknowledges that the land upon which we're undertaking our revitalization efforts is part of the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. In addition, Waterfront Toronto acknowledges that Toronto has historically been a gathering place for many Indigenous people, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples today. So if we can move to item number 2, a motion to approve the meeting agenda. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Raul.
Paul, you're okay to second? Thank you.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, Paul, thank you.
I was on mute, sorry about
Any
that.
discussion? All in favor? Contrary? Okay, so now we can move on to the declaration of conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to be declared? Thank you. None declared. We can now move on to the business of the meeting. So the consent agenda, item number 4. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the open session of the November 17th, 2021 committee meeting. May I please have a motion to approve the November 17th meeting open session minutes? Is there a mover?
Approved.
Thank you, Paul. Seconder, thank you, Raul. So any discussion? All in favor? So we can move forward to the mandate review. So the committee members will note in their book of materials that there's a copy of the committee mandate that was just approved last year. And as part of the mandate, we are required on an annual basis to review our mandate and advise the board of any recommended changes. And as part of our mandate, we're also tasked with reviewing on an annual basis the other key governance documents of the corporation. So our mandate was reviewed it was revised quite substantially in March of 2021. And I understand that management's not proposing any changes at this time, and I'm not aware of any needed changes either. But if the committee, if any committee member has any comments, I'd be pleased to receive those comments. And Raul?
Thank you, Wendy. Just a bit of a rookie question here, being new to the committee. I'd like to table a conversation about stakeholders. So it seems the mandate itself is clear, provided we all have a common understanding of what the definition of stakeholder is. And I don't mean that in any way other than to say we've got a lot of stakeholders at Waterfront Toronto, which is great. It would be helpful for us to understand which of those stakeholders are really within the mandate, and on the outside chance that there's some that aren't intended to be there. So it's as much for clarification. Happy to support the mandate in its current form. Just think it'll be worthwhile having a conversation.
I think you make a very good point. And when I was reviewing the committee mandate just again last week, I noticed the same thing, Raul, because you know we've been talking about that. So I think that's a very good point. Ian, would you like to make any comments?
You're quite right. There's no definition and it's fairly fluid, but I think that the concept of stakeholders includes government and government relations. We're going to hear a bit on that today. It includes our own staff and organizations we deal with from staff, and also the community writ large. There's various times where different, shall we say, stakeholder interests come up, and I think this committee will be reviewing those from time to time. But there isn't if you will, a set agenda. You know, this arises out of our work plan and our mandate as well. But there isn't a set agenda and there's not a set definition of stakeholders. So Cameron or Lisa or Rose, do you want to speak any more about or add anything to?
I would just parse it. Thanks, Ian.
the universe of stakeholders, to your point, do include, of course, our shareholders, governments. We do have standing stakeholder advisory committees which are attached to projects, and those are mobilized around a project to get feedback. We are now creating a new diagnostic with forum research to understand, and we created, I would advise, by the way, we're just in the field to round out this terrific response. 455 people want to be a part of our panel. And these are people that are not attached to a project. They are community members. They're people that either live in the district or they don't, and they're people who are interested in waterfront revitalization. This is a new group that we're able to ping over the years. So I think we need to coalesce. The stakeholder advisory committees are quite easy to understand and to mobilize, because they're, again, dealing with a very specific area of inquiry. Our government shareholders, similarly, this new category, I think we are going to, and again, we're just in the infancy of it, will allow us to understand sort of the broader public perspective from a relationship and reputational management perspective of the corporation. So that's how I see the universe into sort of those three categories, with the new panel of about 500 people being the new dimension that we can add some context to.
I think
Wendy, can I
Meg,
ask a follow-up?
I'm sorry, Meg, did you, before Rahul comes back, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, we do have stakeholder advisory committees that are project specific, but we also attend on a very regular basis community meetings like the West Don Lands Committee, the St. Lawrence Neighborhood Committee. So we do attend a lot of Community Ratepayer Association meetings, and there's a Waterfront for All. We attend their meetings as well and do presentations and are there to answer questions. So those are usually sort of monthly, and that's kind of how we manage with the community beyond the stakeholder advisory and then beyond some of our other newsletter recipients, et cetera. So I just wanted to add that.
Sure. I guess my question is actually probably aimed a little bit more around board accountability. And what I'm going to suggest, because Ian used the word fluid, which I completely appreciate here, but perhaps even if we spend 10 or 15 minutes at our strategic retreat and just outline, just verbally, what the mandates are for each of the committees, just so there's some clarity in our minds on who's accountable for what, because there is a fluid nature of what the various committees are doing with various stakeholders. So it's good to know what our accountability is, and just so lines of communication are clear as well.
Thank you, Rahul. Leslie?
Just to chime in, it's a great topic, Rahul, and I really support that because, you know, I've heard multiple terms in this conversation. There's stakeholders, partners, and on our side, with the work I do, we have sponsors, we have donors, we have, I think what I hear is a big bucket called community stakeholders and all a bunch of shapes. And I'm not sure this committee, even though I'm not on this committee, really has purview of all those things, I guess is what Rahul is from a governance standpoint. I mean, they're all issues the organization deals with. So I'm in many more words than needed supporting Rahul's inquiry.
Thank you. Meg?
Sorry, that was an old hand. I'm sorry.
Oh,
that down.
And I think to Rahul's point, I think if we could have a, you know, have a short definition that's added to stakeholders, so it's not just that one word, which is so broad, perhaps that could be helpful as well. So thank you very much. Okay, any other comments from the committee? Thank you. So as noted in the materials, we're proposing that the other key governance documents not be reviewed at this time, and I've spoken to the board chair and the other committee chairs, and they are not suggesting any changes. And also, many of the documents were just revised and approved late last year, so we're suggesting that the consideration of those documents be deferred until later this year. However, if any committee member does have any comments, I'd suggest they be directed either to me or to our general counsel, to Ian. And any further comments on that particular piece? Thank you. Okay, so moving forward to the HR report. Rose, can you please give us an update on human resources?
Absolutely. Thank you, Wendy. Good morning, everyone. I'll take the HR report as read, and I know, as Wendy mentioned, there's a lot of great stuff on our agenda this morning and some great presentations coming up in the closed session. So I'll provide a quick overview on some of the efforts we've made since our last meeting. Charmaine, if you wouldn't mind moving to page 20, I'd like to start with the HR dashboard. And if you recall, at the last committee, we introduced our KPIs. And I'll just quickly go over some of the information we've updated again since the last quarter. And we'll start at the top left quadrant under employee work-life balance. We measured average vacation days taken by employees and noticed that in Q3, we saw a slight dip in the time taken compared to the same time last year, and even so from Q2. This was likely impacted by the spread of the new Omicron variant, causing many to cancel travel plans, as well as a 3-day office closure over the holidays, which did not require staff to book any vacation time. We hope to see the numbers increase over the next quarter as restrictions begin to lift and many will start feeling more comfortable with traveling. Moving over to the top right quadrant, employee well-being, commitment, and motivation. Again, we measured average sick days taken per employee, and although since the start of the pandemic, we noticed a downward trend in sick time taken, mostly relating to the being isolated at home, less interaction with people. In Q3, we noticed that there was a slight increase in sick time taken, possibly influenced by the reopening of schools, return to the workplace, at least for most of us until mid-December, and the new Omicron variant. We hope that with the longer days, hopefully warmer weather, that can contribute to employees getting more fresh air and outdoor activity, resulting in less time taken in Q4. Moving over to the bottom left quadrant, which is employee satisfaction. We measured voluntary employee turnover. We continue to see an increase in voluntary turnover during this fiscal year, which is still in line with trends in the market and mostly impacted by the pandemic. The Great Resignation continues to trend. And although we are trending upwards so far this year, we hope this trend decreases in the next quarter to land more in line with our overall 5-year average of 10.9, which is fairly healthy. And finally, let's move over to the bottom right quadrant, employee development. If you recall, we updated our learning and development guideline and introduced it in Q1. We saw an increase based on that revision in Q2. However, in Q3, we noticed the numbers dropping slightly in both number of employees using the program and dollars spent. We feel that this was impacted by the mandatory training sessions required this quarter on AOTA, the second phase of Indigenous cultural training, which is from bystander to ally, and certain curtain workloads, especially around the Keyside project. These numbers only include employee or manager initiated learning opportunities. We will continue to promote our learning and development program and hope that we encourage employees to develop their skills further and see an upward trend in Q4. Just a quick update on recruitment. As of December 31st, we had 99 current positions distributed by 83 full-time positions and 16 contracted positions. Of those contracted positions, 8 are being converted to full-time as of April 1st. We onboarded 11 new employees since April 1st, and unfortunately we had 20 employee exits since April 1st. 14 of those were voluntary exits, 3 were involuntary terminations, 2 were at the end of a contract, and 1 was converted. Moving on to the COVID-19 update and our return to the workplace plan. As a reminder, when we last met in November, we advised the committee and our board that we had started to return to the workplace 2 days per week from mid-October. This remained until mid-December, obviously because of the new Omicron variant that was rampant, and resulted in us reverting back to working remotely. Our plan to return to the workplace has been tentatively scheduled for after the March break, so start commencing March 21st. Until then, the office remains open for use and employees are coming in for necessary in-person meetings, such as most of us today. 100% of our staff is fully vaccinated. Pretty proud of that statistic. And although some of the restrictions have been lifted, we continue to adhere to safety protocols by wearing masks in common areas and allowing for physical distancing in meeting rooms. We will continue to take direction from Toronto Public Health. Under our general HR matters, to further enhance and support our workforce planning strategy framework, the HR team has commenced working this quarter on the implementation of our new HR module within our current ERP system, which is Dynamics 365. This module will expand on our current system used for F&O to include absence management, performance management, recruitment, employee self-serve, onboarding and offboarding, budgeting and forecasting, employee competency and development. HR team has also commenced working on with our payroll service provider ADP to upgrade our current payroll system to a new platform. We expect both of these new HR module and payroll platform, to create efficiencies both within the HR department and for all staff. Moving along to DE&I. We began working with M&P in September to create our DE&I strategy and assess our current state of DE&I. Interviews were conducted with selected board members and SMT members. A varied cultural assessment was completed with a 78% participation rate, and we completed 3 focus groups in January. I won't say too much more under DE&I, as we have certain members from the M&P team join us in the closed session to provide the committee an update on where we are in our journey, share preliminary findings on the above mentioned tasks, and provide a draft set of strategic recommendations to further embed in our processes and cultures. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. I tried to keep it short.
Thank you, Rose. Any questions for Rose from the committee? Raul?
Just a quick question on the volunteer, the turnover. I appreciate your comments. I'm just wondering, do you do exit interviews?
We do, Raul. It's not mandatory. We obviously push, but sometimes staff don't want to participate.
And it'd be helpful in one of our meetings, maybe we came back and just gave us a little bit of an overview if there are any consistent themes that are showing up on those.
Absolutely, and I do have some statistic I can share of the voluntary exits that have happened since April 1st. Most of them have gone to new jobs for growth opportunities, and some have left for personal reasons. At least I can just give you those high-level basics, but I'm happy to share more information.
If we can build that, can we add attrition to the KPI dashboard?
I'm sorry, Paul, I couldn't hear you.
Add to the KPI dashboard.
Can we add attrition to the KPI dashboard?
Sure.
I think that's an important one because it's a threat everywhere right now.
Wendy, I have a little question.
Yes.
So just curious on the DEI topic, whether or not there's a lot of emphasis on training, and I'm just wondering, and awareness building, but whether or not you've begun to recognize the transition to giving staff and management the competencies about how to integrate knowledge with the training, because I think that, from my experience, is the emerging gap. People are now being educated, gaining knowledge, but not necessarily understanding, and sometimes being paralyzed by the information. But so it's a question, and you don't need to necessarily respond at this moment. And then the second part of my question is the correlation between that knowledge and, in general, mental health. So the report was a bit silent on how we're supporting staff from mental health and stress, workload, all the things in the context of the environment that everybody's working in. Those are my two, either they're kind of comments or questions. I just didn't see them in the report, so I just wondered.
Thank you, Leslie. Rose, would you like to comment quickly on those?
For sure. We can get more into the training through some of the recommendations that are coming through from M&P, Leslie. We're going to be working on what we need to bring in, how we can integrate some of that training and learning into our everyday lives here at Waterfront and the work we do within Waterfront and with the community. So there's more to come on that. On the mental health, we're happy to say that we enhanced our program last year to further give our staff opportunities to reach out to our EAP provider, so give them more support on that. We've brought in some mental health training. In fact, on the 11th, we've just pivoted a bit because there's been so much focus on mental health. We've actually bringing some physical health session on the 11th on ergonomics and what have you, because no one expected to be working from home for 24 months. Almost. So we've pivoted slightly, but we've always got that lens on mental health, and we've always tried to encourage staff to reach out and bring in sessions, but happy to do more.
Thank you, Rose. Any other questions for Rose?
No, but other than thank you, that was really crisp. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thanks, Paul. So moving on to item number 7. We are interested in having a board retreat, and it's great. Jeannie, thank you for joining us today. Very helpful to have more of the board members today with this committee meeting. And we wanted to talk about the board retreat because committee members will note that the materials state that we're trying to secure a date for the retreat before we break for the summer. We were trying to set it up, as you know, for the end of last year and then also for the early part of this year, but we just couldn't find a date that would work for all the directors. And it now appears that the best date is June 16th. And I understand, Paul, that you are TBC on that date, but we're hoping that that something could work. And over the coming weeks, we will be working on developing the program and the agenda for the day. And a number of committee members have said that they're interested in getting involved in the planning. So please do reach out and let me know. I think we will be interested in doing this coordinating meeting in early April, if that works for everyone, because a number of people are away over the next few weeks. So Alicia has mentioned that she'd like to get involved. Raul, with your expertise, we would be thrilled if you get involved. And you know, Paul, Jeannie, Leslie, anyone that has any interest, that would be terrific. Are there any comments from the committee about the board retreat or the date? Any concerns?
I see the complication I have. It's clashing with another board that I chair, so we'll figure. I'll try to figure something out.
Thank you, Paul. That would be greatly appreciated. I think it's really important. And in speaking with Raul and with a number of other board members, we've talked about making it a very dynamic education session. That's extremely valuable for Waterfront Toronto. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the item number 8, the motion to go into the closed session to discuss items 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 of today's agenda. So I may have a motion to go into that session, and I just want to remind everyone that any resolution considered in this closed session needs to pass when the meeting returns to the open session. So maybe hold on. Thank you, Raul. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Paul. Okay, so we're now moving into closed session.